Good evening, I'm Sonika Loganathan, and welcome to Above the Fold. We begin with a political row over the petrol and diesel price hike. We also take a look at Modi's visit to the UAE, fresh updates from the US on the Adani Group's bribery case, unseasonal storms in Uttar Pradesh, and more. So stay tuned for the full report. Your next visit to the fuel pump is going to cost a little more. Rates have gone up by 3 rupees across all variants of petrol and diesel. And it comes as the crisis in West Asia continues to put pressure on India's energy supplies. Here are the details.
जैसे एक बड़ा संकल्प है पेट्रोल डीजल का संयम से इस्तेमाल करना। साथियों, हमें पेट्रोल डीजल का उपयोग कम करना होगा।
Days after Prime Minister Narendra Modi's plea for restraint in spending, prices at the petrol bunk are now up. Petrol and diesel prices have been increased by 3 rupees per litre across all variants, the sharpest hike in the past 4 years. In Delhi, the price of regular petrol has risen to rupees 97.77 per litre, while diesel is now priced at rupees 90.67. The government says public sector oil companies have been absorbing losses of nearly rupees 1,000 crore a day amid rising global crude oil prices linked to the conflict in West Asia. The hike has triggered sharp political reactions. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi accused the centre of making the public pay for what he called the Modi government's mistake. Opposition parties also alleged that the price hike was deliberately delayed until assembly elections were over. Tamil Nadu Chief Minister C. Joseph Vijay and Karnataka Chief Minister Siddaramaiah also criticized the move. Defending the decision, the BJP said India had shielded consumers from the global oil shock for more than 2 months and described the increase as limited and calibrated. Union Minister G. Kishan Reddy said the hike was unavoidable, adding that fuel prices had risen much more sharply in countries such as the US. Meanwhile, consumers are feeling the sting at the pump.
ये तो हम लोगों पर बहुत अत्यधिक भार पड़ेगा भाई। इधर फीस का 10% बढ़ने वाला, इधर तेल का बढ़ने वाला, इधर राशन पानी का भी बढ़ जाएगा। जैसे ही तेल पर बढ़ा है वैसे ही ट्रक का भाड़ा, बस का भाड़ा, हमारे वाहन का आने जाने का सब पर इफेक्ट पड़ेगा। हर तरफ से जो है हम लोगों मिडिल क्लास या गरीब लोगों पर ही बोझ पड़ रहा है।
So to get a better understanding of what the fuel price increase means for consumers, I'm joined by Deputy Business Editor Kunal Shankar. Kunal, it's a 3 rupee increase today. Should we expect it to be 4 rupees, 5 rupees, 6 rupees next week? I mean, how are we supposed to deal with this?
Really good question, Sonika. And I think it's probably going to play out exactly just the way you described it. And the business team just now did a back of the envelope calculation of what this 3 rupees increase, which is apparently across the board from what we understand from the government's announcement. It is 3 rupees for petrol, diesel, and also 2 rupees for CNG. So the reference market usually is the Delhi market. The rest of the country will accordingly have based on their own local taxes, etc. Going back to the back of the envelope calculation, in the April provisional data from the Petroleum Planning and Analysis Cell, which is under the Petroleum Ministry, India consumed about 4.97 billion litres of petrol and about 9.87 billion litres of diesel. So that comes to about roughly 15 billion litres of both petrol and diesel for the month. If we add the 3 rupees increase, we get an extra of about 4,449 crores.
Okay.
Let's say 4,500 crores.
Sure.
But the government has told us that the shortage is to the tune of 30,000 crore rupees for the oil marketing companies per month. So that's a gap of about 25,000 crore rupees. We can definitely expect the government to sort of increase it again. So this is an incremental increase. I think it's clearly just to soften the blow.
Can you just explain this relationship between politics and fuel? How is that impacting what we're seeing play out now?
Broadly, fuel prices are sensitive issues globally, right? Like you can literally see what's happening in the US. The Trump
They're preparing for the midterm elections.
Trump administration is extremely unpopular because over there it's entirely open market, and the Brent crude prices globally immediately impacts the retail, the end consumer, like you and me, who's going to go at a petrol bunk and fill up gas over there, it's already shot up. Whereas in India, fuel prices have, for a long time, since independence, been administered. It's been called an administered pricing mechanism. That was retired officially, in theory, in April of 2002. But in reality, in practice, that retirement really never took place. It's always been administered to a certain extent. Until 2017, it was greatly administered. And there was an instance in 2011 in the second UPA term when Jayapal Reddy was the petroleum minister, when Brent crude prices again per barrel had shot beyond $100 per barrel. And there were, in fact, protests on the streets by the opposition, including the left and the current BJP, against increase in fuel prices, when the government put up its hand and said we can't do anything because it's hitting our foreign exchange reserves.
Right.
This is indeed a political issue, which is exactly why many analysts have suggested that the government delayed increasing prices until after these 5 crucial assembly elections that took place just now. So we can expect this current increase to be staggered again, like how I'd suggested that will happen. But how hard this might hit the government politically remains to be seen.
Now to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's high-stakes visit to the UAE, with the Iran war and global energy supplies at the top of the agenda. These are the developments.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Abu Dhabi on Friday on the first leg of his 5-nation diplomatic tour. The Prime Minister was personally received at the airport by UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan and was accorded a ceremonial guard of honor. Soon after his arrival, Modi held bilateral talks with Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan and strongly condemned the recent attacks on the UAE amid the ongoing US-Israel-Iran conflict. He noted that the impact of the conflict is being felt globally and reiterated that India is prepared to extend all possible support for efforts aimed at restoring peace in West Asia. Later, in a social media post, Modi described the visit as short but highly productive, saying the discussions focused on strengthening the India-UAE comprehensive strategic partnership. He added that the outcomes of the visit would further deepen bilateral ties while contributing to growth and prosperity. The two countries also signed key agreements covering strategic defense cooperation, petroleum reserves, and LPG supply.
So what does this visit mean for India's strategic and economic interests? Our diplomatic affairs editor, Suhasini Haider, breaks it down.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the UAE and his meetings with UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, or MBZ as he's known, was a return favor in a sense. In January, remember, MBZ had made a 2-hour visit to Delhi to discuss a defense cooperation framework, and today Modi made a 2-hour visit to Abu Dhabi to finalize that agreement. The other big announcement was for strategic petroleum reserves, with storage facilities planned both in India and the UAE, and for LNG collaboration as well. Now, all of these agreements and the visit are significant for 4 main reasons. 1, 2.5 months into the war and the Hormuz Strait blockade, India is beginning to feel the impact on energy, in fact, on the shortages, and of paying premiums for energy in foreign exchange from other countries. India is, remember, 90% dependent on oil imports for its needs. Prime Minister Modi's speech calling on citizens to curtail foreign tours and gold purchases while conserving energy has clearly sent out alarm bells on that issue. Second, strategic reserves are a long-term game, as they are filled only when oil prices are low, not high as they are right now. So this is the second reason the visit is significant, as India fears the US is now going to clamp down further on its Russian oil purchases after ending waivers for Iranian oil purchases. And these waivers for the Russian oil will lapse on Saturday. India needs to sign long-term contracts for both oil and LNG. Third, thus far, India has been hoping for strategic petroleum reserve development with Saudi Arabia. Those conversations went on for more than a decade. However, ties with Saudi Arabia today are much more strained due to its partnership with Pakistan, also Saudi tensions with the UAE and with Israel, while India seems to be increasingly turning more and more towards the UAE in the Gulf region, as well as Israel. Fourth, the visit, therefore, is significant because after Prime Minister Modi's visit to Israel just before the war began, Modi is making his first visit to the region while it's under conflict, and his support to the UAE, the Defense Framework Agreement, all seem to be sending out signals that the government is considering a shift from India's traditional balancing between all the major powers in the region.
Now to Uttar Pradesh, where severe unseasonal storms have claimed more than 100 lives and left widespread destruction across several districts.
At least 111 people have died in Uttar Pradesh after powerful storms, heavy rain, lightning, and thunderstorms battered several districts over the past 2 days. According to the State Relief Commissioner's Office, 72 people were injured, over 170 livestock losses were reported, and more than 220 houses were damaged across 26 districts. Trees and electric poles were uprooted in several areas, disrupting power supply and transport. Districts including Barabanki, Basti, Sambal reported multiple deaths. Authorities are also assessing crop damage caused by the extreme weather. Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath has directed district officials to speed up relief and rescue operations, visit affected areas, and ensure immediate compensation for victims and their families. Officials have also been instructed to provide regular updates on the situation. Meanwhile, Samajwadi Party Chief Akhilesh Yadav urged the government to intensify relief efforts and ensure food, shelter, and medical aid for those affected. Videos of the storm's impact have surfaced on social media, including footage from Bareilly showing strong winds tearing apart a tin shed and throwing a man several feet into the air. He reportedly survived with minor injuries.
दुकान में ये हम काम कर रहे थे, मजदूरी करते हैं और करने के बाद में 4 लोग और थे, सब काम कर रहे थे और करने के बाद में वो आंधी और तूफान आया तो टीन हल्की-हल्की उड़ी थी। हम जाने के बाद में पहले ऊपर पहुंच गए कम से कम 50 फीट ऊंचाई ही से दूर 80 फीट दूरी पे गिरे हैं कम से कम।
Authorities continue to monitor the situation as weather warnings remain in place in parts of the state.
In other news, Indian billionaire and business tycoon Gautam Adani and his nephew Sagar Adani have agreed to pay an $18 million settlement in the US civil court over his corruption case. The payment of civil penalty does not equate to admission of guilt. Adani was indicted by the Justice Department in late 2024 after they found that he had deliberately misled international investors as part of a major bribery scheme. The news comes as the New York Times reported that the US is dropping charges against Adani, and that move comes after Adani hired a new legal team, which includes one of President Trump's personal lawyers. The team met with the Justice Department last month in a previously undisclosed meeting, where they listed out the charges against Adani as invalid. They also said that if the charges are dropped, Adani would consider investing $10 billion into the US economy. Now, an update on the NEET exams. After the NEET UG 2026 exam was cancelled over alleged irregularities, Union Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan announced that the exam will be re-administered on June 21st. He also said that the medical entrance test will shift to a computer-based format from next year to improve transparency and prevent paper leaks. Pradhan said the CBI will carry out a comprehensive investigation into the alleged leak and stressed that the government would not allow such malpractice to happen again. Students will not have to pay any fee for the re-exam, and earlier payments will be refunded. Candidates will also be allowed to choose their preferred exam city again. The exam duration has also been extended by 15 minutes to complete attendance formalities. Now let's turn to the Hindu Roundup for some of our exclusive content. In an editorial titled "Bursting at the Seams" on the rise of inflation, the piece argues that India's seemingly moderate retail inflation masks deeper inflationary pressures building across the economy and driven largely by soaring fuel and energy costs. It says that the sharp rise in wholesale inflation indicates that producers are still absorbing the higher costs, but warns that any increase in petrol and diesel prices could trigger wider price hikes, affecting food, services, and household consumption. The editorial concludes that inflationary pressures are likely to intensify in the coming months, leaving both the government and the Reserve Bank of India with limited room to respond. Tap the card above and watch the editorial on the Hindu Originals YouTube channel. And in the latest episode of Focus Tamil Nadu, Deputy Resident Editor D. Suresh Kumar analyzes Chief Minister C. Joseph Vijay's dramatic first week in office, balancing bold governance decisions with controversial political moves that have already sparked intense debate across Tamil Nadu. Here's a snippet.
In the elections, Vijay's TVK won big, but without an outright majority. He needed a trust vote. He got 144 MLAs to back his motion of confidence. And among those 144 were 25 rebel AIADMK MLAs. The official AIADMK is led by General Secretary Edappadi K. Palniswamy, EPS, a former Chief Minister. But these 25 broke away from their own party to support Vijay. Here is where the judgment call gets problematic. The day before the trust vote, Vijay met the rebel leaders, former ministers Velumani, Vijay Bhaskar and Shanmugam, all regional strongmen, but he pointedly ignored EPS, the legitimate party chief. Vijay, quoting these specific individuals while snubbing EPS, the legitimate leader, immediately handed his critics exactly the ammunition they needed to attack. Horse trading, backroom deals, business as usual. EPS alleged that rebel MLAs were lured with promises of cabinet berths and government board positions. This is where it stings most for Vijay's supporters. On governance, Vijay got it right. Targeted subsidies, task forces, liquor shops shut near schools, real commendable action. On politics, he got it dangerously wrong. Quoting tainted rebels, snubbing legitimate leaders, letting personal loyalties blur the line between public office and private life.
And in the new episode of Talking Politics, political editor Nisula Heber and business and economics editor Sharad Raghavan break down Prime Minister Narendra Modi's recent call for austerity amid the ongoing West Asia conflict and rising economic uncertainty. Here's a quick glimpse from the discussion.
Sharad, that we are now the 5th largest economy in the world and en route to being number 3 pretty soon, displacing Japan and all of that.
Yes.
But all of these dire warnings, and a lot of it has been, I have a feeling, directed at the Indian middle class, which was the advantage of this country in a huge market.
Right.
But is the Indian middle class story then over? If you look at this.
That it's tough to categorically say it's over, but things are really piling up in terms of obstacles to the Indian middle class actually doing well. Whether you look at the premiumization of real estate, it's become so hard for just a normal middle class family to buy a house in any of the metros. They're just unaffordable. I believe we can expect petrol and diesel prices to increase very soon for 2 reasons. One is that the government on the one hand is saying that the oil marketing companies right now are bearing the loss, and these losses are huge, about 10,000 crore a day. And on the other side, the government is saying that they're not going to bail out these companies. So the only option left then is for them to raise prices and at least reduce these losses, if not, start making some profits. So petrol prices, fuel prices are going to increase, real estate is expensive, wages aren't really growing as fast as even inflation is growing. Inflation itself is picking up now thanks to the war, but even apart from that, food inflation was set to grow because, as I said, the monsoon is going to be weak. So yes, the middle class is going in for some tough times.
Next, we go to the major development in the 2017 Unnao rape case. The Supreme Court has set aside a Delhi High Court order granting bail and suspending the sentence of former BJP MLA Kuldeep Singh Sengar. A bench led by Chief Justice of India Surya Kant and Justice Joy Malia Bagchi directed the Delhi High Court to reconsider Sengar's plea for suspension of sentence afresh, preferably before the court's break for summer vacation in June. The Supreme Court also instructed the High Court to hear all parties involved, including counsel representing the survivor, before taking a fresh decision on the matter. The top court clarified that the High Court must decide the plea independently and without being influenced by its earlier order granting bail to Sengar, which had already been stayed by the Supreme Court in December of last year. The case relates to allegations that the survivor, who was a minor at the time, was sexually assaulted by Sengar in 2017 on the false promise of a job. The CBI, which investigated the case, had earlier argued that justice must be ensured for the survivor. And finally, scientists have found a new type of dinosaur in Thailand, the largest dinosaur known to have lived in Southeast Asia. Researchers found the skeletal remains of the Naga titan Chayufumensis, a massive plant-eating dinosaur from the sauropod lineage. Sauropods have long necks, long tails, small heads, and 4 column-like legs, and the Naga Titan was almost 27 meters long. That's about 4 elephants lined up, trunk to tail. It lived between 100 to 120 million years ago and around 40 million years earlier than the Tyrannosaurus rex, and about twice the size of the T-Rex. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Please share your thoughts on today's episode in the comments section. And if you found this video useful, don't forget to share it and save the Above the Fold playlist so that you never miss an update.